Howdy my totally, always Tubular gamers, we're back with, you guessed it, another video, and today I got a fun one for you. We're going to be talking about the top 15 best modern couch co-op games. It's always saddening to see just how few games nowadays have couch co-op. Growing up, it felt like every game that had multiplayer had couch co-op, but with the invention of the internet, and that really taking the gaming world by storm, we started to see much less emphasis on the couch co-op aspect of video games. It focused much more on the online cooperative experiences. And while it's nothing short of astounding that you can play with people from all over the world, there's nothing like sitting down with a buddy, a friend, a loved one, a partner, a goldfish, whoever they are, and just playing through some games, you know, where they're in the real world next to you and you're joshing around. Maybe you got a couple beers or a pizza or some Wendy's spicy nuggets, having a few laughs and really just enjoying yourself. I very much miss the days of couch co-op. While it is really great that I can play with all of my friends virtually, there's nothing like hanging out together and just having some fun. It feels like nowadays more and more games just focus on the online component rather than anything local, but today's video we are exclusively talking about local couch co-op games for modern systems. This list is in no particular order, and these are all games I've played through with somebody else, so I can vouch for their quality. As always, I have not played every single game. I sure have played a lot, but not all of them, so you can let me know down below if there's any games I should check out, or maybe you think I missed something, whether you agree, disagree, etc. I'm always lurking down below, and I'd love to hear what you got to say. I love couch co-op games. So as always, please like, share, comment, subscribe. I got the Patreon and the super thanks. Any support is truly greatly appreciated. Seriously, thank you all so very much. 2025 is going to be our year, and so with that, let's get to the games. So the first game we got here is one that I love talking about, a game that really represents couch co-op as a whole, and that is Cuphead. I know a lot of people were really excited when this game was going to be cooperative and were genuinely shocked when they said that it would not have online co-op. It is exclusively couch co-op. But man oh man, when it gets to modern couch co-op experiences, it does not get much better than Cuphead. Cuphead is a ton of fun when you're playing with somebody else. It's great on its own, and I've even completed it by myself, but I really did have a lot more fun when I was with somebody else. You really gotta focus when you're playing with two people. The bosses get a lot more health, they can take a lot more punishment, and you're really gonna need to coordinate with the other person so you don't both just get totally owned. What's nice is when you're playing in co-op, you can actually rescue the other person if they die, so it's not an immediate game over for them. And while you might think this makes the game easier, I don't know if I would say the game is easier in co-op. I would probably say that the game is slightly harder in co-op. But I also think it's quite a bit more enjoyable in co-op. It can certainly be more frustrating though as well when you're both getting mad at each other because you just barely weren't able to beat a boss, but when you finally do conquer that boss together, it's going to be very satisfying for the both of you. And I think the two of you will be on Cuphead for quite a bit. The game is rather challenging, and I think the first time you play through it, it'll take you probably over 10 hours. But subsequent replays obviously won't be anywhere near as long. There is also the DLC, but man, the DLC is really hard in this game. Either way, I think Cuphead is a great choice if you want to play through something together. And I think the game has low-key become a symbol for couch co-op games. It's one of the best ones out there. So here we have a super obvious one. We have Super Mario Wonder. Now Nintendo really seems to be the only company that still cares a lot about the couch co-op experience. I mean, we even lost couch co-op with Halo, but not Mario. Never Mario. Mario's got plenty of amazing couch co-op games, and one of the very best ones to play came out just a few years ago. It was Super Mario Wonder. The entire game can be played cooperatively from start to finish, and I think it's a lot more fun when you're playing with other people. Yeah, it still is pretty good by itself, but I'll tell you, I've had a hell of a lot more fun when I'm playing with other people. The more the merrier, and unlike New Super Mario Bros., you can't jump on each other and affect each other, at least in a negative way. Here we are a little over a year later, and I still think this is genuinely one of the very best 2D Mario games ever. Like, the game looks amazing, it plays incredibly well, the controls are just straight up perfection. Like, the controls are amazing in this game, and the levels are really great. Every level is very different from the last. They really all have their own gimmick, and they're all incredibly well done. Like, from the very beginning of the game all the way till the end, I was still finding myself very surprised at just how many different gimmicks and ideas are thrown into this. It is pretty crazy, and playing through it with a friend, having that experience together, oh, it just gets better and better. The game also has a good amount of replayability. There's plenty of secrets and things to unlock. You'll be playing this one for quite a bit. If you're somebody that likes platformers at all, in any sense, get as many people as you can to play through this one together if you haven't already. You really won't regret it. I really do think Mario Wonder is better than all of the new Super Mario Bros. Games. I like the aesthetic, the music, the gameplay, and the level design a lot more, and I have absolutely no problem recommending it. So we really got banger after banger here, but I got a double header, a double creature feature, and that is for A Way Out and then It Takes Two. If you're unaware, both of these games were made by the same studio. They have plenty of similarities, but they're both very different experiences. But you know what they have in common? They are entirely cooperative focused. You cannot play these games solo. You have to play with somebody else, and while you can play online, I think these games are best experienced with the other person sitting right next to you. Both of these games are just fantastic. They are not only some of the best modern cooperative experiences you could have with the games, I guess, but some of the best cooperative experiences to ever come out in this medium. Both of these games really have the same strengths going for them. They have a ton of variety, keeping things interesting and having you do something different every hour, and they really emphasize teamwork. You absolutely have to work with the other person if you want to get anywhere in this game. But oh, it is such a great time no matter which game you're playing. I do prefer It Takes Two quite a bit more than A Way Out, but A Way Out is also really great where you're trying to find a way out of this prison. And I gotta say, getting out of that prison is some of the most co-op fun I've ever had. But It Takes Two really is in a league of its own where it just has so many different gimmicks. There's a lot of variety with the gameplay and the areas that you go through. One moment it's a 3D platformer, then it's a third-person shooter. Next it's like a rhythm game, you're doing basic puzzle solving. You're grinding on rails. The game really is just all over the place in the best of ways. Every single hour something different is happening and the gimmicks don't like ever repeat, which is immensely impressive since the game is over 8 hours long. Something else that both of these games have is a bunch of fun little mini games that are actually incredibly well polished. Both of these games are very well polished, and I 100% think both are worth your time. If you're looking for some of the best co-op experiences you could have with any video game, look no further, check both of these games out. You won't regret it. So here we got another favorite in the couch co-op scene. We have Overcooked 2. Now if you're unfamiliar with Overcooked 2, the premise is pretty simple. You're just trying to run a kitchen, you're just trying to make food, you're trying to get all the ingredients together in order to make a tasty meal and fulfill some orders. But it's a lot harder than it sounds. Sometimes there'll be a lot of people, sometimes the kitchen will just fly up into the air and you'll be in a completely different location. Yeah, it's one of those games where stuff gets pretty crazy, and the entire game can be played cooperatively. It really does emphasize co-op actually. I'm pretty sure you can play this game solo, but I've never even attempted to play this game solo. It really is just one of those games where you need to sit down with some other people, family, loved ones, friends, partner, etc., and get to cooking. You'll really be putting that Ratatouille chef's words to the test. What does he say? He's like, anybody can cook. Well, not anybody can play Overcooked 2. You're going to need a decent amount of coordination here if you want to actually start to get through some of these levels. It starts out easy enough, but then the game actually starts to get rather difficult, and a decent level of communication is going to be needed, especially if you want to go for those extra gold stars and extra levels. But the game really is a lot of fun. When everything starts working, everything clicks, and your communication is actually pretty decent, there's really nothing else like it. Just making food as fast as you can, tasks changing, adapting, and then there's also a lot of variety. Really, almost all of the levels are different from each other, and almost all of them have some kind of gimmick. So it really never gets old. It's got a fun art style, it's easy to pick up and understand, but man, it is really hard to master, and you're going to be working at it, especially if you're with people who aren't pro MLG phase cooking experts or anything like that. Still, this is a very fun game that is an excellent choice if you're looking for a game to play with your family or maybe a large friend group. Then we'll truly see if anybody can cook. So we got another 3D platformer. We have Sackboy: A Big Adventure. I remember when this one launched with the PS5, it actually only had local co-op, but I know that online co-op has been added as well. However, I've only ever actually tried it locally, and I gotta say, it makes the game quite a bit more enjoyable. While I like Sackboy: A Big Adventure, I didn't love it. But playing through it with someone else, it certainly does make the game more fun, especially when you're just laughing and messing around with each other, which you absolutely can do in this game. You can play through pretty much the entire game from start to finish in co-op, and I think it's a good 3D platformer. I'm not going to come out here and say that these are some of the best levels of any 3D platformer. Like, the level design is not exceptional in this game, it's rather tame, and it doesn't really do anything you haven't seen before, but it keeps things interesting throughout. There is a number of gimmicks that show up here. They try to introduce a few ideas here and there, and sometimes it does repeat, but they all control well, the game looks good, and I found it pretty entertaining for the most part. It's not just a straight A to B platformer either. There are actually some collectibles that you will have to get, which keeps things just a bit more interesting, but the game really does have a lot of charm to it. I especially like the levels where real world music comes in and they try to sync it up to the music. It's not like on the level that, say, Hi-Fi Rush is, but I still thought it was a pretty neat touch. If you're looking to play through a chill, relaxing 3D platformer with a loved one or maybe a younger one, this might be the game for you. It's not only on PS4 and 5, but it is on PC now, and I think it's good. But I will say, Little Big Planet 1, 2, and 3 do have better local co-op. It's just those games don't go online anymore, and the campaigns were always the weakest aspect of those games. Those games aren't exactly modern anymore either. I mean, I guess maybe Little Big Planet 3, but for this list, I'm going with Sackboy Big Adventure. Pretty decent game. So the next game we have certainly is a favorite of mine. It is Rayman Legends. While you might be able to argue that it isn't exactly modern anymore, at the very least it's on every modern system, and it has been re-released several times. Rayman Legends is the follow-up to Rayman Origins, which was a great 2D platformer, and it really felt like one of Ubisoft's best. But Rayman Legends, oh, this game is so good. It really is one of the very best Ubisoft games ever made. And by extension, it's one of the very best couch co-op games that you could play. It is strictly just a 2D platformer going left to right, but it is a really good one. While the game can be played through solo, which I have before, the game is a lot crazier and it's a lot more fun playing with others. It goes up to 4 players cooperatively, and while it can get pretty crazy and hectic at times, it doesn't ever get unmanageable. You can always see what's happening and what's going on, and these levels actually feel like they're made for 4 players. They're also made for 1 player. They really are just great levels. I think the level design of Rayman Legends is excellent. They're constantly introducing new gimmicks. There's tons of my favorite set pieces, and a lot of the levels just feel very different from each other. They also have a bunch of Rayman Origins levels in it as well, so if you missed that one, well, you got pretty much all of the levels right here. The standout levels for me though, like Sackboy Big Adventure, are the levels that are synced to music. I think these are just great. There's a lot of great songs here, and these levels, they're just a lot of fun. I found myself playing through them several times. Really though, every time I've picked up this game, it's just been a joy to play. It controls incredibly well. It's a beautiful game. It's engaging and entertaining, and I think it's really awesome that other people can join you and experience it all at the same time. Funny enough, on the Wii U, it actually went up to 5 players, but yeah, the Wii U is not exactly modern nowadays. So for this video's sake, if you want to get 3 other people and experience an awesome 2D platformer that doesn't have the word Mario in it, look no further, you got a good one here. Alright, we don't only have platformers here, we have an RPG, a few RPGs. For this entry I have Diablo 2, 3, and 4, all of which are available on modern systems, and they all offer couch co-op. While Diablo and its gameplay certainly is fun by itself, I really do think it is more enjoyable when more people join you, when you're all just hacking and slashing away and annihilating everything on screen. While I know that there are other action RPGs in this style, and some of them might even do certain aspects better than Diablo, like a certain Path of Exile, I still have had some fun in the past with all of these games, and when it comes to couch co-op RPGs, I really don't think there are all that many that are better than the Diablo series. There really just isn't a lot of couch co-op RPGs in general, so it's exciting when even one shows up, but then to be as good as the Diablo series, I think that's pretty awesome. As for which one of these games I think is the best, well, if you're going to play any of these games, you should probably start with Diablo 2 Resurrected. That is a great game that has stood the test of time, and it's an excellent remake. Diablo 3 has plenty of strengths, and Diablo 4, well, it's Diablo 4. You're also getting a substantial amount of content with really all of these games. Not only do all of them have a decent length to them, but there's a ton of replayability with the Diablo series. There's a reason people keep coming back to this series. Might be for the couch co-op. Okay, that's probably not it at all, but you can play these games cooperatively, local, which is pretty cool. So the next game we have here is one you probably didn't expect, and that is The Quarry. Yes, a cooperative horror game, which in itself isn't the most unseen thing. There's plenty of amazing cooperative horror games, but a local couch co-op horror game, that's pretty rare. So The Quarry is by Supermassive Games, who made Until Dawn and the Dark Pictures anthology, and this game plays pretty similar to those where you're mostly watching it, but occasionally you get to walk around in some areas. There's plenty of quick time events, and you do get to make choices. So yeah, it's not exactly the most involved when it comes to the gameplay, but what's always been cool with The Quarry and a few of the Dark Pictures games is you actually get to assign players to certain characters, so whenever you play as that character in the story, that player will get to go, and you can actually just pass one controller around. Since it still is essentially a single player game, now there's just people playing it together. It's a little hard to describe. This is the only cooperative game on this list where you can play all together with just one controller, and I think it's pretty entertaining. This is the only way I've ever actually played through The Quarry, was this cooperative method. I was only playing with one other person though, so we each got like 3 characters. But I do think The Quarry is actually pretty good. The other Dark Pictures anthology games do offer this, but I'd much rather play The Quarry over legit any of the Dark Pictures games. Unfortunately, Until Dawn does not offer it, which I feel is the best of Supermassive's games, but you could easily replicate The Quarry's co-op on your own in Until Dawn. You just gotta keep track of which character is which player. Either way, I would say The Quarry is a good couch co-op game and probably a more underrated pick for a list like this. But don't worry, we got another platformer. Here we have Kirby and the Forgotten Land, the first true 3D Kirby experience, and the entire game can be played cooperatively. Kirby will be joined by Bandana D the entire game, and this in my opinion is the ideal way to play through the game. I think the game is pretty good when you're by yourself, but when you've got Bandana D and the two of you are working together to beat up a boss or explore a level, it's always a good time. Most Kirby games actually have local co-op. Again, Nintendo actually cares about local co-op and they do include it in most Kirby games, but I really do think this is the best modern Kirby game out there. I would argue that it might be like the best Kirby game of them all actually. I've always thought this game is pretty fun. I love the cute aesthetic. I think it controls well. And while it certainly isn't the most challenging, I did find it rather entertaining, and I was also playing couch co-op pretty much the entire time. I wouldn't say the game changes all that much though if you have Bandana D with you. I think the bosses get a little bit of extra health, and Bandana D certainly can help you in a few other scenarios, but it doesn't like drastically change the game or anything. It just adds another player and it adds a bit more fun to it, and sometimes that's all you need. Not every experience has to be crazy complicated when more players get involved, and when it comes to the more casual cooperative experiences, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, that's a good one, don't forget about it. Alright, you knew I couldn't have a list like this and not include a LEGO game. LEGO games are known for their couch co-op. The couch co-op in LEGO games really is legendary. It's been around for like 20 years now, since the GameCube days. And yes, modern LEGO games still offer that couch co-op experience. It really is just essential to LEGO's DNA. But which LEGO game am I choosing? You probably already could guess, and you can see that it is LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga. For me, it wasn't even close. This is one of the very best LEGO games of them all, and I think it's the best couch co-op LEGO game in the last like 10 years. It really is awesome, and it's crazy how much content is in this game. It has episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 of Star Wars. And while it isn't the most comprehensive overview of all of these movies, since it's 9 movies we're talking about here, they still hit a lot of the major plot points, and there's still some really great set pieces. But outside of the 9 episodes, you also get to freely explore several, and I mean several open worlds, and everything I just mentioned can be done cooperatively. From the moment you boot the game up to the moment you turn it off when you're done with it, 100%, everything can be played cooperatively, and it's always going to be a lot more fun in a LEGO game when you got somebody with you. And this game just has like seemingly endless content. If you want to 100% this game, you're going to be here a long, and I mean a long time, like past the 60 or 70 hour mark. This is easily the biggest LEGO game of them all. But it also has some of the best content of any LEGO game. It's all pretty engaging for the most part. Even some of the open world activities I still found to be pretty fun. Oh, and it's maybe the best looking LEGO game. Yeah, it's a lot of best LEGO this and that. What I'm trying to say is it's a pretty great game. And here we are a few years later and I'm just still like, that was a really good game with a lot of great content, and it can be played cooperatively. Alright though, if that game was too kiddie for you, you knew I couldn't have a list without including some kind of beat 'em up or brawler, so I actually got a double header for your double creature feature. We have TMNT Shredder's Revenge and Streets of Rage 4, both of these by .mu, and both of these are absolutely fantastic. They are arguably two of the very best beat 'em ups ever made. Beat 'em ups have been around a long time, but it really doesn't get any better than Streets of Rage 4 and Shredder's Revenge. Like, I love both of these games. Both of them are just an absolute blast. And while yeah, they're pretty fun when you're playing by yourself, oh, they are so much better when you've got a few other friends with you and you're just absolutely kicking ass. It is so much fun in this game. You're just beating the absolute shit out of everything in both of these games. The combat is excellent. It's some of the best beat 'em up combat. The controls are great. There's actually a little bit of depth when it comes to the combat. There's tons of enemies. All of the levels are different from each other. They're challenging, but they're not too challenging. They're excellently paced. You can finish them in around the 1.5 to 2 hour mark, but they're insanely replayable. They're great for short bursts, long bursts. Like, these are just excellent games, and the soundtrack is great in both of them. Beat 'em ups just don't really get better than these two games, and they can both be played locally with couch co-op, and that's exactly how I recommend them. If you're somebody who's a fan of this genre and you haven't tried these two games, highly recommend them. Make sure you have some buddies first though. Alright, so the next game we have here is a bit more of an underrated one, a newer one that just didn't get enough eyeballs, and I always have a lot of fun including hidden gems on this list, so I got Rabbit and Steel. This one came out in 2024, it's still only on PC, but it does offer couch co-op, and I've actually played a bit of it in couch co-op, and I gotta say, it's pretty fun. So this is probably the weirdest game on the list. It's a mix of an MMO and a bullet hell where you and up to 3 other players go up against these giant bosses, MMO style, where you're just constantly chipping away at their health and you're waiting on cooldowns, you're constantly attacking them and they're constantly attacking you, but dodging these attacks is no easy feat. You're going to need to be communicating with your teammates pretty much the entire time. All of these bosses have completely unique movesets and they're all set up in a certain way where teamwork is absolutely required, especially if you want to get anywhere in this game. And it's a pretty challenging game, especially on the harder difficulties. Like, the game will really start to wipe the floor with you. It also has some roguelike elements where you're constantly doing runs, so you know, each run isn't more than like an hour, but the game's incredibly replayable, and obviously it's much better in co-op. I've never even played this game in solo, to be honest. It just doesn't seem like it would be anywhere near as good, so I've stuck strictly to co-op, and yeah, the co-op is great. And I feel like there's really never been another game like it, this unique blend of dodging all these attacks and then all the cooldowns with the roguelike elements, and it just actually all does come together. While there's a lot of moving parts, it really does start to click with you, and it actually gets pretty fun. The game's got a charming but simple art style, and the music, okay, the music's actually really good in this game. If you're looking for one of the more different cooperative experiences that I don't think anybody was expecting to see on a list like this, maybe consider giving this one a shot. It is just by one developer, and I think it's pretty solid. Alright, it's time to talk about one of my favorite games of all time, Baldur's Gate 3. This game really needs no introduction. It is no hyperbole, one of the greatest games ever made, and the entire game can be played cooperatively. But what's even crazier is it offers couch co-op, except for Xbox Series S. But outside of the Series S, yeah, you can really play through the entire game with somebody next to you, and that's actually how I played through the entire game for the first time. From the first 5 minutes to the last 5 minutes, I played the entire game with somebody next to me, and it was a wonderful experience. While there are plenty of perks to playing by yourself, this game really is a lot of fun when you have somebody else playing it with you. It really does feel like just straight up D&D, and I mean that in the absolute best of ways. But on top of that, Baldur's Gate 3, it really is just like one of the greatest video games of all time. Not just one of the greatest role-playing or couch co-op games, no, just one of the greatest games of all time. It might be the best game on this entire list. It really is that good. From all the amazing different dialogue options to the excellent character creator that actually does mean something, the great story, some of the most lovable companions of all time, and then just the insane amount of replayability. Oh yeah, Baldur's Gate 3, it really is no joke. While it might take a bit of time to get going, once it gets going, oh, it absolutely does get going, and it really doesn't stop. And you're going to be playing this game a long time. It took me about 100 hours to finish it the first time I played it, but it was so worth it. I was ready to cry when it ended because I was sad that it was over. Like, I genuinely did love the game that much. It's just such a phenomenal video game, and playing through it with somebody else, it really is one of the best experiences I've ever had with a video game, period. And I just can't recommend this one enough to everybody. Even if you don't like turn-based games, try this one out. Okay, I've probably made it pretty clear at this point that I like platformers, but here we have Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. I'm sure some people will say that's not really a modern game anymore. Well, it was re-released on the Switch with Funky Mode, and Funky Mode basically makes it a new game. But you also got to remember, it's Tropical Freeze, one of the best 2D platformers of all time, and yeah, you can play through the entire game cooperatively with someone next to you. I've already talked about a number of 2D platformers here, but I gotta say Tropical Freeze, it might be like the best one of them all. The level design is truly immaculate. Every single level is great. They're all different from each other, and they're all incredibly challenging. Like, this is a tough game, but it's also really rewarding. I had a lot of fun trying to conquer some of these levels with a buddy. Like, yeah, the game is great by itself, but when you got somebody else there with you, ooh, it is so good. It is such a fun time, especially when you're just barely making it through a level through the skin of your teeth and you actually do succeed. It's incredibly rewarding, it's fun, and most of all, it's really entertaining. The game also controls just incredibly well. I love how this game feels. What's also really cool is in co-op, you can actually jump off DK and do your own thing, but you can also join back with them if it's a particularly hard section, leading to a little bit of strategy here and there. I know this game might have had a bit of a rocky release, but I think in later years everybody can really just appreciate how good Tropical Freeze is, and it really makes me wonder why we don't have another Donkey Kong game. And yes, I am aware that Donkey Kong Country Returns is also on Switch now. That's another great co-op game, but today we're talking about Tropical Freeze. I think Tropical Freeze is better, and it is one of the best co-op experiences you could have. And that soundtrack, chef's kiss out here, really is the shit. Okay, to finish things off, we have Contra Operation Galuga. To start this list off, I thought I would have a run and gun, and we're ending with a run and gun as well. While Operation Galuga isn't the best Contra game, it's one of the better run and gun games we've had in quite some time. Unfortunately, the days of getting a bunch of Metal Slug or Contra games are long gone. Every once in a while we're thrown a bone like this and we're reminded of just how good run and gun games can actually be. While there's plenty of fun to be had in run and gun games by yourself, it's always going to be the best with friends. If you think about some of the best run and gun experiences you've had, it's probably with somebody else. Operation Galuga does a lot of things right though, especially if you're a longtime fan of Contra. They really went back to the basics with this one. It's kind of a reimagining of the original game, and it just sees two buff macho dudes getting dropped onto this island, basically blowing everything up. That's all you really do in this game, is just annihilate everything. There is a bit of platforming, but most of the time you're blasting everything in sight, and oh, it is a lot of fun. It controls well, it feels nice, you get a bunch of awesome weapons, the explosions are big, and there's actually a decent amount of replayability. While it is only around the 2-hour mark, the game actually does have a bunch of other challenges. You can replay it with tons of other characters. It's more than just playing through the game once and that's it. But hey, that first time you play through it, it's also going to be pretty cool. I think most of these levels are actually rather decent. Some of them are a little flat for my liking, but there's still plenty of set pieces. The bosses are awesome. You can switch between the weapons, and yeah, I found it to be rather enjoyable. It can also get somewhat challenging. While it doesn't go balls to the wall crazy difficult like some of the older Contra games, I thought it had a little bit of bite to it. Overall though, I think the game was a pretty good time, and if you're ever going to play this game for any reason, play it with a buddy. I think it's going to be a much better experience. And really, that's the sentiment I have for basically all of these games. If you're going to play any of the games I mentioned, play it with someone else. Preferably have that person right next to you. You'll never be able to recreate that experience over the internet, and I hope that those experiences never die out. Companies like Nintendo and, surprisingly, Activision Blizzard are keeping couch co-op alive, and that's really great. I hope in the future couch co-op is here to stay. I hope we get more of it. Maybe Halo can go back to couch co-op. But either way, I hope I at least introduced you to one new couch co-op game. It probably was Rabbit and Steel, but I hope I introduced you to one new game you might want to check out. So, if you made it to this part of the video, Kirby, you know what to do. If you know, you know. So, I'll talk to you all later. Bye-bye now.